Hello, hello, everyone.
Hey,
Hello.
good morning or afternoon or evening or whatever it happens to be in your particular time zone.
Right.
We are an international show, so we have to consideration for that.
I'm here for a time. Hopefully, Scott will be joining us later. And I'm joined by Randal, as usual. And we've just been remarking just before the show, we need to get your name on the slides.
Yeah, right. I'm like this this legendary guest host. It's kind of like how in the original Lost in Space, the guy that played the weird castaway guy was always special guest star for the entire 3 seasons.
Right. Be careful you don't become part of the furniture, though, right? We respect you and thank you for helping us out, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And Raf's joining us. Hey, Raf, how's it going?
Hey, Raf.
Hello, good. Thank you. Thanks for letting me join.
So I guess we'll do the usual stuff. So my name's Simon Lightfoot, Flutter community leader, Dev Angel Sun CTO, blah blah blah. You can get me here on Twitter. And Randal, do you wanna give a bit of information about yourself?
Yeah, just briefly, I'm a 45-year veteran in the industry, but most recently, my specialization has been as a Flutter Google developer expert, which means I've been vetted by Google to be able to talk about Flutter in public and to also act as a liaison between the development community and the guys back at HQ. So I'm basically doing that job. And I'm also a full-time Flutter contractor now. So I'm now worked on 3 different contracts that have involved full-time Flutter. So I'm very happy to be doing that instead of the 30 years of Perl that I also am famous for.
Ouch. I tell you what, I do remember CGI scripts and Perl.
Oh, yes. And Matt's script archive with full of really horrible CGI code, and people emulated and copied that, and they were full of security holes. And Matt Wright.
Oh, fun times.
What a day. What a day. Yes.
Raf, what are you up to at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm Android refugee.
Android developer.
I used to be, yes. And now I'm doing Flutter for like 4 years, I guess. So
that's longer than it's been around.
Yeah.
I always love it when a job posting says I want 5 years of Flutter, and I go,
right,
who are you gonna get? There's nobody that's 5 years of Flutter.
I was thinking it's
probably 4 now.
It was this time. It was early September 2017 when I started doing Flutter.
Yeah. So it's 4. It's just coming up on 4 years.
Yeah.
For you, yeah. But 5 years, no. Nobody has 5 years unless they worked at Google and worked on Sky. You know, that's pretty much it. Yeah. Back in the day.
I think there's only a few people that have that sticker on them at the moment.
Exactly. And they're probably still happy at Google.
Right. Introductions aside, that's the do's and don'ts. Be nice, respectful, no swearing, adult content, any of that kind of stuff. Any promotions or spam, just not tolerated, banned, you're gone. Simple as that. So be respectful and everything's good. I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think that's good.
So Randal,
sir,
let me share a screen here because you were talking about this and we thought this would be a good topic for the show. Just to be open to everyone that's on that's joining us for watching. Please feel free to tag your questions, #Humpday Q&A as usual, like this in the chat, or highlight them with like the question mark emoji or the question emoji or whatever it is, so that we can identify these are questions that you want us to answer.
Or the letter Q colon also works.
Yeah, Q colon also works.
Yeah.
And we'll get to them after we've done a bit of talking, and we're happy to take comments and questions. Right.
Yes.
So this is what you were just talking about, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I have only recently been exposed to functional programming using Dart. And one of the things that was fascinating about it for me First, let me back up. How I got exposed to this was that I was going through Riso Coders, who, if you haven't seen his stuff, you really need to look at it. He's got some intensely great tutorials written in Medium and also written on his website, and also wonderful videos.
YouTube,
really well done. So that the almost all those are in YouTube. But Riso Coder had something like an 11-part series on data-driven design, which is about how to lay out your code so that you have the right layers. But one of the things that he emphasized in this particular series was this thing called functional programming, and how not to just have a variable that can contain either an exception or the real value that can get muddled. So the functional programming equivalent is you have a variable of type either. And what that means is it has two possible types, which you define as two elements to a generic. And by convention, the left side is always an exception, and the right side, left and right are sort of arbitrary, but the right side is a good value. Now, why this is important is you can't just access this value. You have to access it through methods called like .when, which basically give you two different callbacks depending on whether it is an exception or an actual value. Now, I haven't made much use of that yet, but one of the other things from functional programming is this thing called option. Now, option has two possibilities, some or none. So when it's some, you have a value and you can do something with it. When it's none, it's the equivalent of a strongly typed null. Now, what this gets us away from is the idea that all nulls are all nulls, so you can use them everywhere. This is a typed null. It's a specific type, but it's called none. Now, again, you can't just use one of these option values. You're going to call .when on it, and it's going to give you two callbacks. When it's some, do this. When it's none, do that. And I think this is a much stronger concept than simply using double question mark and things like that. And mostly because it's a typed null. So you can't accidentally assign the null from this thing into the null of that thing. Mm-hmm. And so so there are a couple of packages that are building this. The one that the DDD course used is called Dartz, D-A-R-T-Z. But that package is somewhat abandoned and was not originally designed from scratch as null safe. The package I prefer is still young. It's called FPDart, but it has gotten some great support from the author, and it's very well tested. I understand the tests. I'm reading the tests. I understand the tests. It's also well documented in that he's written a series of articles to really describe how to use some and none and either. It has interfaces for, but I haven't used those yet, interfaces for dealing with futures, dealing with aggregation of those things. So there's things like mapping and stuff. If you're familiar with, I believe it's called CATS from the Scala world, it's basically implementing things along that line. So you can do things like reduce down a list of sums, options, so that if any of them are none, then you get a none result. But if all of them are something, you get a aggregation result. It's It's really rather clever. I haven't got my head entirely around it, but I'm really strongly suggesting that rather than rely on null as a sentinel for yourself, you should start looking at using something like FPDart and understand how option works. Because, so like I've been building RiverPod providers, which we're going to talk about in a minute as well. I've been building RiverPod providers that the default value is not null anymore. It's none. So I can clearly distinguish that this is the none, that's the null that's typed to this particular provider. And it makes it so much more elegant than having to have a sentinel value of some kind. Like, I know we're all used to the traditional programming where we use -1 as a sentinel saying this isn't set yet or something.
Ooh,
and this, yeah, this gives you a distinct typed value called none of this generic type, and as a sentinel value.
I like it, but I don't like it at the same time. I get the option. I get it. I mean,
yeah,
it's quite nice seeing some and none and optional in terms of, I know from Rust and some of the other languages that have it built in. I'd like to see it built into Dart eventually. Like if you're gonna do it built in, right? And then have like the whole try catch mechanism could all be relating to it, and you're treating none as an actual typed version of that type, as it were.
Well, the nice thing is that Dart is flexible enough.
Oh yeah.
In its generic system to be able to do this, which is really amazing how far they've been able to take this in FPDart. I mean, there's gyrations in the code. Boy, I tell you, there's a bit of dancing and singing and pointing in the code. But the fact that the generic system of Dart is strong enough and capable enough to be able to provide a system like this that actually works and has a reasonable syntax, I think is a huge statement to Dart.
It was it in the latest version of Dart? I'm just checking. They improved support for
covariance, I think it was. Something.
There's something about generics though, wasn't there? In Dart
yeah.
2.14?
That constants can have generics now. That was new.
Yeah, we've also removed the old restriction on typed arguments, which disallowed using generic function types as type argument.
Oh, right. Wow. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I remember this. Yeah.
Just every time I think I understand generics, they add something to it. So it's like right. They're just trying to keep ahead of me, I guess.
But yeah, no, I mean, personally, when I've been doing this, something similar to this kind of notion of having none as a response type, I would just have my custom model object have a static none implementation with like default values.
Right.
And that's a static const, meaning that I can just do an identity check in terms of equals. So if thing is equals to, I don't know, user.none,
yeah,
then no user is set, that kind of principle.
Yeah, the nice thing about this is that you can just simply use FPDart, and now you have your none without having to implement it in every class that needs it.
And the whole either thing, which I kind of find it interesting as well. I mean, the very common practice that was done in Android. I haven't been doing Android specifically for a couple of years now, but you would want to return back an error. You would not want to throw an exception because it throws down a chain or something else. You would like to handle an error as a value as well as the response, as a successful response type. So you end up doing this kind of either thing where you have like a union of the two types that you're trying to do. You end up with a little model class which just basically unions the two types and use generics to kind of do that normally.
Right.
So to especially if you're trying to do cross boundaries like async tasks back in the day, I'm going to show my age, you would have like one generic object that you could pass back as the response. So you would like wrap it up and stuff like this. So this kind of notion of either has been around a while.
Right. So the example you have on the screen right now is showing that the left side, which is the exception side, is a string. The right side is the double that would normally be the normal value coming back. Mm-hmm. And the either type is essentially making a union type of those two. And so when it returns left cannot divide by 0, that means it returns, that's a string. It's strongly typed as a string, which is great. And it's going to return that as the error for that because you're trying to divide by 0. And then if you scroll down just a little bit, you went off the bottom of the screen there. So the right means that it's right means proper. That's the only way I keep remembering that. So that says, yes, X over Y is going to be the value of the non-exception type. And that's all strongly typed, by the way. So when you say left in there, it has to be a string. And when you say right, it has to be a double. And it's like how that all gets rippled down, I'm still stunned. It just works.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, why would I? I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, right?
Sure.
Obviously, yeah. Treat your error as a value, right? As a string. Great. I mean, I wouldn't say that this is a great idea, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've lost complete. I mean, it's an error message, but I've lost all the other properties around that, right?
Yeah.
So like the place the error occurred or other information, which I'm going to get from when you throw an exception.
You could actually have left be an exception, like an actual literal exception.
No, exactly. But then again, it's still.
And it would capture everything.
Well, no, because an exception itself is only when it's thrown it captures the stack trace.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
That's
So
handled as part of the system. So you could do stack trace.current and capture it yourself. But then I'm just saying that
there is a thing called task either, which is basically does a function inside an exception catcher that would have as the left side, the either side, would be the actual exception thrown.
Oh, I mean, I don't see any reason why. If you want to do this, you could just come up with your own error type that contains the information you want to capture, especially if you're dealing with APIs and you want to have like their own internal API code on various other bits of information and respond with that. I'm just saying that, it's just be wary of what you're doing here, right? And to understand what you're trying to achieve, because there's reasons to do one way and reasons to do the other.
So our friend Kevmu in the chat room says, how does this compare to Kotlin's result class? I don't know.
That, if I remember right, is very similar, right? Like,
so either is usually the result in other languages. So in Rust, it's actually a result.
Okay. So Kevmu was on track.
Yeah, and what I usually do is on left, I create my own abstract class failure, and then I can inherit different failures.
I think the thing about
you can try and catch on that.
Yeah, I think the thing about using something like FPDart is that it sort of creates a sort of a unified interface. So everything works roughly the same way. And the other thing is that we're only looking at a couple of the classes that FPDart provides. There's about 20 in there so far and another 10 on the roadmap. And there are things like managing futures, capturing the error from a future. It's pretty incredible, actually. Well documented, well tested. I don't know what the test percent coverage is.
Oh my God, they have monads.
Yeah, I know. It was like, oh my God, that monad. I don't even know what monad. Every time I've tried to learn Haskell. Haskell? Haskell. Yeah. Right. Every time I've tried to learn Haskell, I get to like chapter 5 and it starts talking about monads. And I go, what the hell are monads? I have no idea what you're saying.
What's a semi-lattice?
I don't know. Well, a lot of those are used.
Programming is just kind of come up with like these synonyms for the same thing because you can't write all the same way.
It's got the greatest lower bound of the two values. Well, a lot of these are interesting. There are layers that are included only by the end user layers. So there's a lot of things that to give common functionality to a number of the end user types. See, there's the end user types there on the screen. Those are what I'm programming with. And by the way, reader is complex because it overlaps with reader from river pod. So you have to have hides and shows a lot. And it's like, I hate doing hide and show. But reader is the name in the FP world. So that's kind of what we're stuck with.
I'm definitely kind of curious about this task, this sort of task system and unit.
So task. Now I'm saying like you. Task is basically. Don't give me a British accent. Task is basically a code to run. So it's basically a closure. Yeah. And task either is running that inside a catch block so that it can capture the exception, things like that. It's a different way of thinking, clearly. But the nice thing is it goes with the rest of Dart. It really works well. So I still use null on the border where I have to interface with things that want null. For example, I had on the previous project, I had a interface to Google Auth. And Google Auth has this return value that is a user question mark. So it's basically a user status, or it's null saying you're not logged in. So I wrapped that and created option user. And what that was is it basically would take the user or null and turn it into an option. So it was some or none.
Right.
And the advantage of that is that then at my top level widget, I could do the option user dot when it's some, go ahead and I'm logged in. When it's none, go ahead to the login screen. And it was much clearer code than adding the null choice code for that, I think. It made more sense to me. And it's also very rigorous in that I couldn't just use an option user as a trivial thing. I had to actually always distinguish, is it some or none, which meant I had to think about, am I logged in or logged out? Anyway, so it's an option for y'all. It's not like something that that everybody is going to get excited about or used to, but I think there's a lot of promise in this. And because functional programming is available in a number of languages, apparently including Rust and things like that, I think a package like FPDart should really be promoted and used.
This is interesting.
Well, modern languages usually has parts of functional programming.
Okay.
So Kotlin, Scala, and all those languages are not pure, but they are like hybrids, and so will Dart.
I mean, it sort of started coming along when streams were introduced into various things, right? And that sort of functional style, set up your pipeline and having data flow through. It came from a lot of functional languages and was brought into many different languages. And now they kind of get this hybrid approach of the best of both, right?
Right. But again, I'm amazed that Dart's generic mechanism is allowing for this. That it's because again, it's strongly typed all the way down. Like either the two types that you have for the unification. There's also a tuple that's like that. So there's tuple with two parts. And again, strongly typed all the way down. And I really like the work that, I forget the guy's name, Roman something. Who's the author of this? It's probably up there somewhere.
Sandra?
Yeah, that guy. Okay. He's been really wonderful at, like I said, producing these additional articles. There's like 10 additional articles that are in the repo. He hasn't done anything recently, so maybe he's gotten bored or tired of it for a second. But it's definitely
apparently the repo was updated 6 hours ago.
Oh well, okay. So I'm out of date. Okay.
He's so lazy.
Yeah.
6 hours.
He hasn't done anything in 6 hours? Man,
6 hours?
what's the deal with it? Yeah.
Is he sleeping or what?
Push. just push. Right.
I think it's kind of interesting when you see like an open source project. It's like 6 months, no one's touching it. Like, that's great. That's still fresh. That's still new.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I would highly, if you're going to do, there are probably 5 different solutions in the pub for either and option, but I would strongly recommend FPDart still, just because it's more complete, more documented, more tested probably than anything out there.
I think FPDart is based on this book. It's like functional programming in Scala.
Probably. Well, he said he based it on cats in Scala.
Yeah.
So cats are based on this book.
Oh, okay.
So if you like this book, then you will like this library.
Yeah. But like I said, there's things in there to deal with futures. There's things in there to deal with just subroutine tasks, and I still haven't gotten into like the whole map left and things like that, where you can actually take a list of things and drill down through it. I'm not quite smart enough about that yet. I've just been using the basics of I have an option value or I have an either value, and I can make informed choices based on that. And that's already worth it for me. That's already worth having it in the distros of my clients. So that's it on FPDart, unless you want to keep going.
I'm just kind of just flinging through these pages, like seeing how he's putting it all together.
Yeah.
No, there's some interesting stuff here. It's got the point here is there's a lot of documentation to really look at and use as examples. But
right. That's the other thing I liked over Darts. Darts, the entire documentation was the one line of the comment from the method, and it was like, oh, this is not telling me anything. There's just tons and tons of classes. I have no idea what this does. And they were expecting you to go off to something like that Scala book and try to figure it out from there.
Looks like they've got a little examples thing in the repo.
The examples are good.
It's probably not fully featured though. I don't know.
There are some. No, the examples work, I think.
No, I just mean like they don't think all the examples cover all the classes in Dart.
No, that's some of the classes have been updated recently, so yeah.
This is nice. So they've implemented Huffman codec.
Yeah, he's done a lot of great work. This is some great work and really needs to get promoted better.
Right. Well, I'll stop sharing.
And we've done it. That's what we can do. We have our platform. This is what we do.
Yeah, it'll be also good when Dart actually gets like pattern matching. That'll be also very nice.
Oh yes,
library to use.
Is that ever going to happen? Is that on the list?
Yes.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah. So they're currently working. What are they currently working on? Let's have a quick look, shall we?
Yeah. Let's look at the roadmap.
So this is the language thing, right? The language funnel.
We should get Kevu on to talk about this.
So the Kevin Moore in the chat, I think, is the other Kevin Moore.
Oh, is it? It's not the Kevin Moore I know.
I don't think so. I can't see that. I can't see.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Ask the Kevin to identify himself.
Right.
Right. Are you the Kevin? What was that line from? Will the real Kevin please stand up?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I thought it was Kevmu. Okay. Never mind.
Anyway. Generic function types as type arguments was one of the recent things they brought in. Oh, the triple shift operator was another one that they brought back in.
Yep.
What did I see recently? They're doing here we go. Allow passing constructors as functions. So we're going to get constructor tear-offs.
Yep.
So this is kind of nice, right? Let me make this bigger. Hopefully everyone can see that. I really like this idea of being able to specify the name constructor or constructor. So they used to, I don't know if you know this, but there used to be a way of doing this in Dart 1. You put the hashtag, the hash symbol at the end of the class name, and it would give you the constructor back as a function.
Oh, wow. And I know there was some ambiguity that resulted from this, so there had to be resolved that in the language spec in terms of if it's exactly like this, then it's the tear off, and if it's not exactly like this, then it's the function call or whatever.
Yeah,
it was sort of weird.
It's been a while since I've looked at this, but this seems to be the conversation. I don't know what the end spec is. I think there's a link normally to the. It looks to me like what they've done is they've added .new as the unnamed parameter, as the unnamed one, and then you have the dot, and then whatever the name is of the named constructor.
Yeah.
Which gets rid of the ambiguity of class name versus constructor reference.
Okay. I actually, as one of my repos that I follow, I'm actually following the language spec repo because I'm insane.
Yeah. The language, the actual language repo actually has the spec planet. This is it working? No, it's working. Yeah. I can't remember where it is now. Yeah, working patterns.
Yeah, I've got the URL here somewhere. Let me see.
Sorry, I've got it here. I'll bring it up.
Okay.
So yeah, some of the stuff about patterns is really interesting. Yeah, look, multiple return values, algebraic data types, destructuring. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, things like this, like these aren't real examples. It's just to the viewers. These aren't real examples. These are just the ideas being thrown around in the language, right? This might be what it's like in the future, although it could be completely different. So, this is all still in planning. But yeah, this notion of maybe having multiple return types and be able to return multiple values.
So this week's show is This Week in MetaFlutter.
Right? This is what it is. I do I always like this, though. I've liked this from other languages where...
Oh, yeah. Perl had that. Perl had that back in, 30 years ago.
I mean, even if you return back like an array, it would extract those entries. It's a very common thing to want to pull things out of an object or an array and assign them to local variables.
Right.
To use them. And just having that easily accessible makes a big difference. And I see that they were doing it here as well. The notion of giving a name or the key, and it would extract the value from the key.
Oh, that's slick.
So that was another thing. I can't remember. Was it this one? Yeah. So here's the map, all with first and second in it. And the idea is that you could then put the key of first and then in A, and A becomes is set with value 1.
No, I like that. I really like that. I hope that gets in the language somewhere.
Yeah. So there's and one of the things that I feel that we're missing in the language right now, I have done for a while actually, is something I like from Python, KW args. So there's a so I don't even, do you know what I'm talking about, Randall?
Yeah, I do.
There's a way of getting a map of the arguments to the function, right? And you can pass them on, and they're extracted out. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's probably very terrible to implement this, especially in machine code natively. But to extract them out from the map and then use them as parameters for the next function in the chain, like the super call, for example. Now, it can't be treated. I don't think it'd be treated as a map. It'd probably be very inefficient to do that as a map for a function for parameters. I don't know enough details about the inner workings of Dart's parameter passing. However, the interesting point is when it comes to things like edit text, right? For us, and some of the widgets that have 30 different parameters to the constructor, when you want to subclass that or to provide some overrated functionality, you have to pass through all of those parameters, right? You have to pass through the documentation. There's a lot of boilerplate you have to do to just maybe modify one small thing, right?
Right. Yeah. That part I've noticed is that there's no easy way to say, take the 18 arguments that I might have and pass it on to my super. There's no easy way to do that. And
if there was a way with this whole sort of look at pattern matching, if they can do that kind of thing, I thought that would be really beneficial, being able to it doesn't have to be exactly the same functionality. Obviously, you need some specific use cases around it. But that one I can think of, just passing on parameters, I feel should just be like pass on the parameters I got to the super function with these changes. That should be a simple thing to do, not having to have always boilerplate of hundreds of lines for hundreds of parameters, right? So what else do we have here? Algebraic data types.
Yeah, so that's what you need for pattern matching.
Yeah, wow.
Sorry, why am I missing? What am I missing here? Am I missing something here? Sorry.
So it's like basically something similar to like sealed classes and stuff.
Oh, okay. But we can do this already.
Yes, but you cannot pattern match on classes like that. You need to read more.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I see. Oh, sorry, this bit here. Yeah. Today you can accomplish this by using the manual testing of types. Yeah, this works with composite, and what we really want is a switch on whatever it is. Yeah,
the pattern match. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. And patterns. We're going to skip all this stuff, but yeah, I saw some stuff like binding and matching. So yeah, taking the right hand side and mapping it to the left hand side. This multiple matching on the if statement, which I thought was kind of interesting as well. So this is obviously going to match the A and B contents in this case statement to. They've obviously passed it in a static, but you're passing maybe some more variables, or the other way around, right? You could pass in A, B, and check it against 1, 2. This is kind of where it kind of got me when I was looking at this. So this is literally saying like, I'm wondering if this could describe parameters, right? It's definitely gonna it definitely needs some thought to obviously make sure things aren't getting more complicated, because the problem is we've run out of brackets, right? We have square brackets, we have parentheses, we have curly braces, right? We need more brackets to declare different things, and like there's no more brackets on your keyboard, right? Like,
Unicode left pointing and right pointing hands. That would do it.
Right? Like over here.
This is what you're doing.
There was
well, I'm still happy that Dart got cascades right after all these years.
Yes, definitely.
I don't know if you're familiar with cascades from Smalltalk, but that's sort of where that started, and Gilad Bracha brought it forward into Dart when he was still on the Dart design team. And cascades in Smalltalk returned the value of the method send, not the value of the left side, which meant that many times you wanted the original thing that you were cascading onto. And so there was a special call in Smalltalk called yourself. And its sole purpose was to return the object that it was being sent to. And it was the shortest method in Smalltalk, because the default for a method in Smalltalk when it was empty was to return yourself. So it was an empty method. But it got used all the time in cascades because you almost always wanted the left side. In Dart, the result of a cascade is the object that the method is being sent to, which is exactly what you want.
Yes.
This is history.
I'm kind of wondering what else we have here. So I think this was a long time issue, wasn't it? Yeah, await 4 didn't work well with a A6i yield. This was
really it didn't work well.
It's been a long term. This is the background here. That it was issue 121.
Wow, that finally got fixed.
Wow, it is. It's issue 121 in language. Okay, all right. I'll give him that one.
Okay, that's not.
I was going to the Flutter repo for a second. I was like, wow, that's ancient. Now here we go. These are Dart lang SDK issues that have been raised by it. But yeah, this obviously goes through and explains it. Let's see if there's some examples down here. Yeah. So yeah, you try to do one of these like an async star stream, right? Using values.
I think this show
it wouldn't work basically, right? When you had a stream.
This show is going to win for the most esoteric Humpday we've ever done. I'm surprised there's still 15 people watching us. So thank you, 15 people, for sticking around for us discussing the most esoteric subjects we could possibly discuss for today.
What is this? Sound declaration site variants. I have not got a clue.
Can we get more? Can we get more obscure? I'm waiting for questions in the channel, so please ask a question.
We'll get back on topic in a second.
Yeah, we do have some general Flutter knowledge as well, not just esoteric, crazy people stuff. We actually do have esoteric stuff. And I'm looking out at rain now, and I'm thinking I'm going to walk in another hour and a half to go meet my friend for lunch, and I'm going, it's raining, but this is Oregon; it's supposed to rain. But I don't have any artificial light, so this is the natural sunlight, but it's underneath a sky of clouds. So hopefully you can still see me, and I blame that on my wonderful Logitech Brio that Google bought for me last year.
Allow Enum class to have members. Ooh, please.
Ooh, wait, what does that mean?
Being spec'd. So
what does that mean? Wait.
Look. So this is what, if you want to do this, right?
Who extends Enum? Oh my God.
No. If you want to do an Enum, that literally do this all the time, where you want to pass in some parameters to it, just to have some, like, a name of it or some value that's not just its ordinal or index, right?
Right.
Then you end up doing this. I end up doing this all the time, where I create a class that has static const inside it and takes the value and sets like a internal final field, right?
Oh, we do have Kevmu in our private chat.
Oh, hang a minute. I hear Kevmu. Hey, Kev, welcome.
He heard his name.
Along trying to fix bugs again. A message from Simon. I'm like, can you come on? I was like, oh no.
No. So there's a Kevin
his ears are burning because we were talking about him.
Yeah. There's a Kevin Moore in the chat, and I was like, is this you? And I looked at the thing, I'm like, this isn't him. But I was like, oh, we're talking about the language. Kevin might like to join us on this one.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd reach out and say hello.
How you guys doing? Yeah, this is like new as of, or at least Bob's been updating this. Yeah, this is super exciting stuff.
Yeah. We were just this is something I'm always doing, essentially making like static, const values in a class, just so I can get an associated value to an enum, right? And to be able to do something as simple as this would be, it's so beneficial.
When you guys have discussed what we've done in enum so far, right? So if you look at 2.14,
is this in the language funnel? The language repo?
No. This is the easiest thing to do. I always recommend Enum.
Send me a link. I'll open it up.
Here you go. Truth is the change log, always.
Ooh.
So if you scroll down to 2.14.
Oh, so this is the actual language 2.14, and it's got the...
Here you go. So there, I just sent you a quick link to get down to core. Just so this is, if people care about enums, this is actually really good because Lhasa blesses.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
There you go. So first, we now have. Well, there's actually a bunch. This is actually good stuff because I was actually just doing some pull requests on this. Because I don't know if people know that we now have.
Is this in 2.14?
This is shipped. So this is latest Dart stable, latest Flutter stable. Okay.
Yeah.
So all enums now implement or extend. It ends up being kind of the same. The enum interface, which is shared. So there's a shared enum interface because people have asked us to be able to polymorph over and do like iterable of enum or whatever else. You can now do functions over enums. It's a general thing.
Yeah,
which is super useful. A I've actually been super excited about having hash all, and hash all unordered.
Yes,
because I've been claiming literally for almost 5 years that we've had so many implementations of hash, but that's separate from this. So that aspect of Enum is super nice in 2.14, and I think
how do you use that Enum common interface? Do you implement things in that?
It's this here, right? So you would extend
well,
Enum.
Scroll. No. You don't. Scroll up a bit. Scroll up to the top.
This is
saying
change
that
log.
if you do no, you're right there. Just go back down to the code. So actually, I've never done this. This is go put a Dart doc. My understanding is you cannot extend or implement enum. It's reserved. Right. It's kind of like num. Num is exclusively for the compiler and for us, but you can at least refer to the thing and deal with the thing, which is great. And actually, let me look at api.dart.dev. If you go to core, and there's an enum class now. Sorry, oh yes, and so the enum type has an index property, which is super nice. So now you can at least do some reasoning about those things. That's 2.14. That's already shipped, stuff that's already shipped. There you go. So there are cases where at least you can do some logic now. If you're doing serialization over arbitrary enums, it helps a little bit.
Right, because you can treat any enum as an arbitrary type.
Right, I can have helpers on top of enum. And then 2.15, if you scroll to the changelog now, Lhasa is, again, going crazy. So let me send you the short link to that.
2.15. Oh my God.
So this is we're working on right now. And again, we can get distracted in all this fun stuff. Annotate types inside generics, but scroll down a little bit. Let's not get too crazy with this. Scroll down to core, Dart core.
Okay, yeah, core libraries. Gotcha.
There we go. So now we have an extension. Finally, everyone in the world.
Name. Oh my God, name. Oh, there. I never have to code that again. Oh my God.
And so this is the fun stuff because you don't. I need to talk to Lhasa. I think there was just again some. We don't like to break people, so we had to be careful about things. So these are just as extensions.
Yeah. Compare by index. Compare by name. Oh my God!
So those are static.
How soon is that shipping?
What?
How soon is that shipping?
When 2.15 comes out.
Okay, I know. You can't announce future dates, Well,
no, but what's nice is it's committed and it's in our SDK now.
Oh, okay.
And the last one, this is again the fun of extension methods, right? Because we didn't have a clean, convenient way to change the API here. So what we now have is I have my enum, I don't know, zodiac signs.
Yeah.
Dot values is a list of enum. So I can do. We can create an extension on iterable of enum.
Right.
Ooh.
So I can do dot values dot. I forget what the name of it. It's like a lookup thing. api.dart.dev/ Let's go BE. Let's see. I don't know if I think this just landed, so we'll see if the docs have caught up. Oh yeah. I don't know if people know that they can do this here. If you want to look at here, I'll throw you this one. If you do api.dart.dev/BE, it stands for bleeding edge.
Wow.
Ooh.
And then that redirects. So now click on core. So this is basically like tip of tree. As soon as our robot catches up, if you want to know what's like at the absolute, so you'd have to go do special magic to go get this API because you'd have to or build it yourself. But click on core here, Simon.
I was just trying to make sure everyone has the link that we just spoke about. Yep. Okay. Core. Yes. When we're going
on the left.
Dot core.
There you go. Now scroll on the right.
Yep.
And go all the way down. We have extensions. And so now there's function. Yeah. So do command tab on both of those or whatever.
Yeah.
So this is an extension on iterable of T. Ooh, we need to improve Dart doc here because it should say iterable of T where T extends enum.
Okay.
It's underdefined. but if you scroll down as name map, so now I can do that. So I can do dot by name, pass in a string. So now I can go both ways.
Wow.
For old school .NET folks or new school .NET folks, I'm guessing this still exists. You always had enum.parse or try-parse. Enum.parse. This is the equivalent of .parse.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
So I can look up an enum by name, and then I can get the name out of an enum. So all that crazy, we've all written it split, by dot whatever. That's
so at some point you're going to be changing your serializer to JSON serializer.
Well, you know what? Actually, in the trivial case, I can, which is exciting. Yeah, in the trivial case. Well, and this is the tricky part. I did some work in JSON serializable to make sure that I throw a good exception. So I need to make sure that's good. And the other thing is, I do also let you do some custom renaming on enum values. So if you have camel case names, I'll switch them to a snake case or kebab case. I love those names for cases. Thank you, Bob, for telling me those. But I think if I know that you are using the normal names, I can. JSON serializable gets way simpler. So there you go. There's some new extensions in 2.
Yeah, because you'd have to. Some people use like uppercase enum values in JSON, right? So things like that. So you'd have to give people a rename option if you're going to do the comparison for them.
Yes, in JSON serializable, I say you can provide a rename to enum values.
Field rename.
Well, maybe not actually. Maybe I need to look. Maybe I don't. Maybe it's just.
I don't know if enums have that capability.
Yeah, I think actually I take that back. You're absolutely right. People have asked for it. I just haven't implemented it yet.
There's a perfect opportunity for open source people to contribute to your project, right?
You know what? I just had someone, a gentleman, I guess it doesn't matter where he's from, so I won't tell you. But a gentleman sent me a PR, and in classic me fashion, I was like, I don't think you actually fixed anything here. And I closed it. And then he persisted very politely. And I dug in more and was like, oh no, he was absolutely right. So he actually, if you look, the most recent release of JSON serializable wasn't so it is possible for third-party people to fix issues in JSON serializable.
Yeah, was it like a little bracket missing or something slightly off? And it's like
it was a one-line change, but to figure out that was the one line you needed was pretty heroic. Like this.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's the magic one line. You have to debug that stuff to find that magic one line you need to change.
And it's a complex machine, but I was really surprised. I was really happy about that. What else is happening in 2.15? See, these are just good conversations. Everyone should know that we now have object.hash and hash all. So if you're importing Quiver just for the hash functions, this is in 2.14. I'm actually in the process of migrating. I think we had 4 copies of hash algorithms. Yeah, there you go. I think we seriously had 4 or 5 copies of Jenkins hash in the SDK. And so now I'm going through and eliminating them all because we now support that, which is super great.
Is this something that would be used by Equatable now, or?
Yes. Yeah. And then, of course, the idea here is, I'm curious on the perf because there's a hash function on that takes 20 arguments, and of course, there's a bunch of sentinel values,
right?
Positional arguments, and there's sentinel values. I hope that we are smart about how we compile that. I did some analysis a while ago because you don't want to have a stack, your stack frame with 20 arguments that are unused because hash tends to be in hot functions.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to do some performance analysis there. I think Lhasa did a lot of due diligence to make sure that was really good.
When you're saying Lhasa, is that a person you're referring to?
Lhasa, yeah. Yes. I don't think he's on Twitter. Lasse. He's a gentleman that lives in Denmark and has been on the Dart team longer than I have. And he does lots of we can all thank him for the enum work.
Cool.
And hash all. He's I'm sick and tired of
Yeah, I wanted to make sure he got proper credit then. So yes.
And what's great, and these are things that people need to take, keep in mind. If you're curious about how Dart works and how diligent folks are, go look at if you go find the request, the commit it points back to the discussion in the SDK. And we have a bunch of very diligent people on our team, and they were being very careful about, are we regressing size? Because now you need to keep track of this string that's the enum value, and that's separate than the toString value. And you want to make sure that you're not keeping alive extra stuff that you don't need. Because if people aren't calling name or using name, you don't want to, imagine if every enum suddenly has this extra value on it, and you have, you're serializing protobufs and you have 10,000 enums, that can add a lot of weight. And so, across the VM and Dart to JS, like they were being very careful to make sure that we didn't regress size or performance. There's a lot of, it seems like a simple thing, but it wasn't.
And of course, making sure we don't break people. Right? Like most things in programming, at first glance, it seems simple. And then there's so many like avenues of other things that have to come around a change. But yeah, it adds up. It adds up.
It does add up. But yeah, we're yeah, go ahead.
I thought the symbol constructor did accept any string as a parameter. Am I missing something?
I don't use symbols. Symbols are a weird thing. They were introduced mainly to make sure that you could refer to a named thing, like a field name, and make sure it didn't go through minification with Dart to JS, so you could refer to that token. And there's some
recently.
But I don't remember. Honestly, I don't remember.
You know what I saw recently was this. Do you see this example? I'll zoom in a bit, hopefully. Oh, the image doesn't get bigger. Great, thanks.
Embiggen, enhance.
So this is a kind of an interesting one. They're using the hash. I'm assuming this. I mean, this is valid Dart.
That is a symbol literal.
Yeah, that is a symbol thing. So I was kind of curious when I saw this. I was like, that's actually a really good use of a symbol used as a unique identifier, I think, for this kind of thing. So I've never seen it being used practically, apart from is it no method? I can't remember what the class the
no
function
such method. Yeah,
no such method.
And
I haven't really used it outside of that.
My understanding is that existed so that when you refer to things by symbol, when Dart to JS goes through, or any platform, strings are more important in JavaScript. Yeah. When you go through and does the rename and minification, the symbols stay corresponding to the resulting compiled name, so that you can. And again, of course, if you're doing things like no such method and if you're invocating methods directly, I do string foo or string my method name. Dart to JS recompiles that to .fg or something, like just to make it tiny. I wish I could tell you, this is clearly why you want to use symbols in this context.
No, of course, right? I'm not.
Other than it's cool.
It was kind of a cool, interesting notion of you can pass in the ID, which you could still do with this is with Boxy with layout ID widget. It takes an object as ID. A symbol is an object. It has a unique comparison check. So there's no reason why you couldn't do this type of ID and then use those same IDs inside your delegate.
What I like is that syntax is from Smalltalk, and obviously the Smalltalk influence on Dart in the early days is obvious here.
If someone around here I would post a question on Reddit maybe, and like, why would I use symbol in this case, or see if that already exists, and I can follow up to see if people will answer the question, because
symbols are unique and they're not going to get reduced, so it's really kind of handy for those.
Well, no, they might get reduced, but they get reduced such that they maintain, at least my recollection, and I might be getting this wrong, they might get reduced, but they will be reduced to match what Dart to JS does with other names.
So in a consistent way, yeah.
It's consistent, and maybe that would get you something. So in your code, you can have a long descriptive symbol, and then at compile time, that gets shrunk down to something tiny. Maybe that code size, but I don't know. Other than it's a fun syntax to use, it looks kind of cool.
It'd be interesting to put a long symbol in and then just rep the APK and see what shows up.
Or just run Dart to JS and look at your diff.
Oh, right, yeah. Dart to JS is pretty readable.
The output from Dart to JS isn't meant to be readable, but compared to assembler, I think
and compared to WASM, definitely.
Although honestly, at this point, if you look at output from Dart to JS, it might as well be assembly.
It's true. Robust. It's getting close.
Yeah. Do you guys want to? I mean, there's obviously the things that we're looking forward to in 2.15. They're cranking on constructor tear-offs, which would be super exciting.
Yeah, we were just discussing that actually. That's really. I was saying that in Dart 1, you used to be able to put a hash symbol at the end of a class name. It was in Yeah, it's in Dart 1 before Dart 2, if I remember rightly. You used to be able to put the class name in a hash, and it'd be the constructor as a function reference that you could call.
But that, I don't think that shipped in Dart 1, did it? I don't think it did.
Yeah. It was.
I don't know.
It was functional at one point. I think it was.
I know in
Dart.js. Dart 2, if I remember rightly.
Okay. I know in JSON serializable there is lots of code where I would love to pass in a function name, and instead I have to do parentheses foo arrow some class dot from JSON whatever, and so those kinds of things will get. I mean, I guess it's nice in that respect, and I just one of those things that lots of people have asked for a long time.
So this is in 2.15 now,
but that I think yes, we have not. The constructor tear-offs have not landed yet, so we have not added a change. We try to be diligent about not putting things in the change log if they aren't ready to ship.
Yeah, I saw in the funnel here we had it currently been implemented, passing constructors as functions.
Yeah, and then obviously they're still cranking on.
This is what I want to do definitely. Yeah, Enum classes have members definitely.
Metaprogramming is cooler than that. Come on.
Well, I just
it's more complicated to understand. The Enum stuff I think is much more straightforward for folks. Yeah.
What is there?
Do you want to see like the before and after?
Sure.
Here, let me find Jake Mac. It's actually so I'll show you. We are prototyping it right now with the build system, which is great, but it means that the result is a little wonky. So I'm sending you a link to 2 files right now. The first file is what a user would hand wave, what the user would write, and the second file is what would get generated.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's a way for you to do split screen or something.
I will see what I can do here. So this
Have
is like
a side. Is it Rafal?
Yeah.
Rafal?
Just Raf. Everyone says Raf.
Just Raf.
Whatever. Yeah, I've seen that. It's pretty cool.
So this is all right.
So this is what. So go back to the first one, and we can walk through these. I think I understand most of these enough to at least explain. So the first one, look at line 13 here. So I'm describing I believe it ends up being stateless. Go back. Actually, go back to the other tab to see what my app ends up being. Where's my app? I'm going to scroll down to see my app.
Sorry. Yeah. So this is. Oh, this is my app, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Stateless. Yeah.
Hang on.
Line 137.
Okay, so it creates a stateless widget. So this is exactly what you would want, right? Which is, so if we go back again, well, this is now tab 1. In tab 1, I define a build method that's just private. And I say, and this is the state I need, right? A counter and a title and other things. And here's the build. And this is what a lot of us want to write, I just want to write the function. And if I'm lazy, honestly, I've had to go back to code and oh yes, I should make this a widget and be a good person. But now you can just write that and then go back to the other tab and we'll generate my app for you.
And it generates this for you, with the appropriate constructor and it
does the key that we all forget to do unless we get the lint enabled or something. So yeah, it does the right thing for you. And what's interesting, and then of course the build function ends up calling your other function there, and the compiler will be smart and likely just inline that, which is what you want.
Yeah.
So that was one, and then so let's keep scrolling. This is the input. If you want to give me
a line number, I'll.
So I'm going to make sure. Hopefully, I'll get this right. So if you look at. Oh, slow down, dude. Scroll down a little bit.
Sorry, there's probably a lag here. Sorry.
That's okay. Go down to the render object at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Stop right there. Render box. Okay. So look at line.
Yeah.
So that's saying, okay, now go find my color-filled render box in the output. Yeah. Tab 2.
Yeah. So
you
see these.
You see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, this is the boilerplate that we're all used to doing, right? When you're doing these things where you need to you just want to have a variable that's private that's passed in, and then the setter and getter do the appropriate things, and then because it's marked as needs paint, that it actually adds in the appropriate call to mark needs paint. Yeah.
That kind of stuff. And so I think a lot of this, I mean, I like to think of this again, like JSON serializable or other things, which is boilerplate and toil are our enemies. They are easy to mess up. You know, again, actually, it's funny with this hash function thing that I was rewriting. To do some of these hash functions and do it correctly, you need to call finish after you've generated the hash. And there were code paths where you weren't calling finish, like you just forget. And so having one place to debug this stuff where it's like, okay, I trust that whoever writes this plugin writes it correctly. It hopefully ends up, making things better. So I think I'm super excited about metaprogramming. That is further down. So it's not 2.15 at all. It's after 2.15. I don't know when after 2.15. But they're being very diligent. We already have some prototyping going on in the analyzer around making sure that we can analyze it correctly.
For example, this one we just saw, render accessors. Am I right in thinking that has to be made by the Dart team, or we'll be able to make our own sort of templates, if you will, and make use of it? These all have to be done.
So this
I know this is out there, so I know it's further out.
No, it's a great conversation to have.
Just not now.
We've already, folks like Remy have already been super involved. We try to be very open about it. So the idea here, it's actually super exciting because we've had things like data classes that people really want. What were the other things people really been asking for? They want features in Flutter, like some of this stuff, right? Some auto magic. And it was tough. I did some initial analysis on data classes, and we could certainly do it. If you ask 5 people what they want in their data class, you will get 5 answers.
Right.
Maybe 6 or 7, honestly. And I'm sorry, I'm going to make sure I'm intentional with this because I think it's actually important to see into the. I'm not on the language team. I give some feedback, right? Bob and Lassa and Eric and Leaf, and they do amazing. Jake, they do amazing jobs. They're trying to be very, very diligent about this. And part of the diligence there is we could go off and just do like do a survey. We'll pick, the features that are like 60% threshold, what people think of data class, and then people, and 30% of people will be annoyed because why don't you have 2 JSON from JSON, or why is it immutable? I want mutable, and or whatever, and you'll never make everyone happy. And it is syntactic sugar. It is literally syntactic sugar, and it's amazing, beautiful syntactic sugar. You could argue that Dart is just syntactic sugar on top of assembler. It's all syntactic sugar at some point. So I think the wisdom there is that instead of baking this in and requiring everyone in the world to follow along, it's a trade-off. The idea is if we give the extensibility to the language itself to understand metaprogramming, then now, in theory, we can make everyone happy or more people happy because you could extend your notion of what data class is and still have a nice, concise syntax.
This reminds me of the C pre-processing, right? that kind of notion of pre-do something with all my code and do some magic, and then the amount of things that people would do with that is insane. Like you could be like write PHP code and it would interpret all the brackets in the right way to make it C code, and like all sorts of crazy things.
It's like the corn shell, I think, was written in essentially an algol like pre-processing step, as I recall.
I don't know. That might be before my time.
Yeah, it had like else if and a bunch of other keywords defined using the C preprocessor, and so essentially algol.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, so
corn shell.
It's good to keep in mind though too the way they're approaching it. There's trade-offs. There's trade-offs at every level, right? And so the way they're approaching it now is it's a 3-phase process. And this is the current discussion. This might change. There's a 3-phase process that it goes through. And you can define your logic at any one or all of these levels. The idea is the first level is what are the types that are available. And if I want to define a new type, I can, but I can only do that with visibility into the existing types. And then I can introduce new API in those types or an existing type. So I can add members. And then the third layer is I can add implementation to those members. So that causes limitations, but the nice thing about that is we can now do generation incrementally, because we basically can just you slowly unwrap the visible API surface, which helps us with analysis, and we can understand the dependencies between things. Like, so if A doesn't reference the types in B, I can add members, and I know that doesn't affect things because there's no reference to that type. Or if I'm just changing the implementation of another type, I know that the API boundary between libraries is not changed because I'm just, the imports and the type references are all sealed at that point, right? And so, and the idea is hopefully, so you're still again, the current design is you're still just emitting strings. The output is just strings, and we'll format it for you, right? So we're not, because again, if we're shipping this as part of the SDK, you don't want to have something on the order of the size of the analyzer is a Dart colon. You don't want Dart colon analyzer. You don't, because now suddenly I can't iterate that without breaking everybody in the world. We have problems enough trying not to break folks in the industry. So having string be the model, I think, is a good model here. And again, I'm speaking for folks in the team, so I hope I'm getting most of this right. If any of this is wrong, blame me, not the language team. But the idea there is hopefully to get away from it's strings with really, really hard rails, because you must pass analysis. You can't, generate. We'll make sure you can't generate garbage, at least to some extent, right? If you generate a bad class definition or something, the whole thing will halt and will scream, and we'll be able to point back and say this generator was the thing that tried to generate, a bad class or something. So we think we're looking for a good balance, and we'll be hopeful. And again, just a quick follow on to your other question, Simon. I'm sure that people on the Flutter and Dart teams will ship some of these things. So there will be canonical versions of data class that people close to us will ship, and we'll have high support. And if you want to go off into the weeds and build your own or use someone else's, have at it. But it's like anything else. You need to be.
I was just thinking about I'm just imagining that the JSON serializable package, for example, could be switched over to being meta program almost, and provide those annotations that people just add to their classes, and it goes through the whole process of generating the code for them.
So here's the I'll send you. That's funny you should mention. So here is in the example repo. So this is the personal repo of Jake, who's one of the people helping design this. So if you're curious why this random code is there, he's just putting it there because. This is an example of. I guess he uses lowercase j for his annotation to kind of distinguish it. The idea is, I can annotate and, so look at, and open up a separate tab and open up the user.dart to see the output.
Right.
So you are absolutely right that the idea here is.
So this is like the user class, the string name, JSON serializable, data class, and then here we go. So this is generating the to JSON and then the from JSON.
Hash code, equality, copy width.
And that's all the data class kind of stuff.
Yep.
I tell you something that that is that's a name constructor, right? I suppose actually, sorry, I was going to say what I tend to do. The documentation states using like a factory method at the moment. I think for from JSON, a lot of the places does that. I think a lot.
You don't have to at all. The only reason I use a factory is because that way I can call a function, a top level function to create the thing. That's the only reason I use factories with JSON serializable. That's it.
No, it was just a case of I found that static methods actually quite nice because you can use them as tear-offs.
Yes, and honestly,
so that's what I do a lot of the time.
If you want to have, it's nice to have a single constructor, because then if I wanted to have, validation logic around name must be non-empty or not white space, you define that once. So another nice reason for.
So there's in my eyes, I'm kind of curious actually if you know the difference. In my eyes, a static method and a factory constructor is basically the same thing, except for one can be referenced as a method and the other can't. I'm assuming the compiler sees them differently, but they don't, because I can still run code right before I call the constructor.
There are some other crazy things you can do with there's a couple other crazy things you can do with factories. For instance,
So like super
imagine
reference.
there was I could have in Dart, I could have a widget. Imagine I had a factory widget dot text to a string. You could do equals text there, and it's called a redirecting factory that points to another, so I don't have to repeat everything. So
I think if I remember right, you can also call the super named methods as well, the name constructors from the super class as well. I think.
Yeah, there's some magic there.
Weird
so
magic
yeah, but honestly, I think because there's no allocation happening, right? Like the fundamental difference there is like if I do a constructor that's not a factory, I am instantiating memory in this context, and I am. Factory could do deduping and return an existing instance. You don't know. Actually, that was a problem because with null safety, I had some cases where in a factory I returned null, and you can't do that anymore because it's like strongly typed. Like I can't make a nullable factory. So there's a little change there. But I think for all intents and purposes, you're right. There's no difference, and so therefore the tear-off thing makes a lot of sense, at least in the context of factors.
We were discussing it earlier, and it came up to my mind. Someone I think on Twitter posted out they were having there must be an easy way of doing all this boilerplate. They were just basically trying to do like a edit text with it's an email field, so it pre-populate like the input decoration, it pre-populate the validator and a bunch of other stuff around an edit text or an input field, and it was kind of interesting because I looked at that and went, yeah, I mean that I've always had that, and I've kind of. The problem with being around and doing Flutter for ages is you just get used to doing it a certain way, and that's the way you do it, right? You don't think about it from a fresh perspective of, oh my gosh, I've got to do all this stuff, that boilerplate to get around to, metaprogram, brilliant, right? That's going to help. But it does, one of the things that we were talking about earlier that we found quite common was I have a series of, let's say, a good example is a widget, right? I have 20 parameters to construct a parameter to this widget, or it's really complicated. I don't know, edit text, for example. And is it edit text? I might have forgotten it. Whatever, text field, whatever. You want to pass them over to this. You want to extend that class and do some specific behavior and extend text field. So you want to pass all those parameters. So you have to re-replicate all those named parameters and then pass them over to the super with whatever modifications you're trying to do, right? Which is a very common pattern to do if you're doing a form, like extending the form widgets and doing all that kind of stuff. And I tell you what I was saying I missed is from Python, where you have a KW args, you have like a one sort of map. It's a special map. That when you index into, you can treat it as arguments, and then if you modify it, and you pass it on to the superclass, and it will unpack them and as the parameters for calling the super constructor. Sorry. So there was some really fancy.
Simon, are you just giving me a feature request? Have you found this issue?
Yeah. I'm giving you a feature request.
Sounds like it.
+1.
No,
plus
I'm
one.
just saying that, like, it's kind of right. Everyone's like +1. Yeah, but it's kind of interesting because that kind of principle, I think, would be the solution around that problem. But whether or not it makes sense as a language thing, I don't know.
So for those types of things, actually, that's an interesting question. Could we do that with metaprogramming? I guess if we had a definition. Could we create a constructor for you that did that? That's a tricky one. I don't know if you can do with metaprogramming. You will be what you can do in metaprogramming will be limited, and people will be annoyed by it. Like you can't delete things in metaprogramming. And believe me, there are really, really spectacularly good reasons to do it this way.
Yeah. Well, I've seen the nuts thing people did with the C preprocessor, and it's just like, you can't just allow any arbitrary input-output because it just it'll explode on you. Because people would do random things in there that would make infinite. You'd have some crazy things that would just throw everything out of whack, right? Like,
I mean, for a while they discussed about having basically control over what you can do in metaprogramming, like really tight, to make sure you can be Turing complete in the metaprogramming model, like prohibit it, because we didn't want what we realized is you end up being too limited. So there's still some active discussion going on around. We don't want you touching the disk, for instance. We will give you access to, you can query for the classes that are visible and do certain things, but we don't want you going off to disk and reading from disk randomly, because a bunch of weird things can happen. And now the question is, do we enforce that in some way? Or, do we enforce do we limit the kind of code you can import? Or do we, and I'm saying we, as I'm not doing any of this work.
No, I get it.
Decisions. But, or do we just say, please don't do this? Because right now in build, for instance, the build system, we give you you can get your assets with the API. There's nothing stopping you from using I/O, but you better not, or networking, because a bunch of stuff will start falling.
I know, right?
But
I can't remember what I saw. I saw some in fact, Raf, I think you first did a talk, didn't you, on code generation back in Flutter London days, didn't you? Yeah, that's when
that was a long time ago.
That was the one. That was a long time ago. That's when I first looked at it, and it's funny that some of that stuff just throw out changing files randomly, and of course the analysis server doesn't know about them, and they've not been indexed, and all sorts of fun things.
You're not hermetic anymore. You can't be incremental. Right. And incremental builds are super nice. You get a lot of benefits. I have to take off for an appointment. I'm so sorry, Joe.
Yeah, so no. Thank you for dropping by. It was really nice to have a chat, and we've learned a lot. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for stopping by. I guess you heard your ears burning when I was talking to the other Kevin Moore.
No, we talked about that, right? There are a few Kevin Moores around.
Yeah. So I misidentified you as him, and then I said, "Well, Kev Moo's here," and he goes, and Simon properly said, "Are you sure it's the right guy?" So we were actually talking about you.
I think I know there's 3 Kevin Moores that I know of in the Flutter community.
That's crazy.
It's good getting this kind of inside information, though. This is great. I appreciate you stopping by.
And again, I try not to be too inside. Again, I want to. It's good for people to remember, you can look at the changelog, you can look at the SDK repo to see commits that are going through. I just honestly, most of the stuff is I go look to what's out there. Everything around metaprogramming is public, and you can go digging through issues. Please be kind in the issues. Please, ask good questions. Don't ask when will this come 500 times. It doesn't help.
Right. Use the thumbs up, all that stuff.
Use the thumbs up to say this is exciting, and add good comments. And we're excited to let people try it out. But not for a while. In the meantime, Dart, have fun with the enums.
Dart just keeps getting better. I'm so glad I hitched my post to this. Hitch my ride to this post.
To this wagon? Yeah, your wagon.
Yeah, there we go. Something like that. Some metaphor. Yeah.
I do have to run though, gentlemen. It was good to see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Take care. Later.
Thanks.
Yeah, cheers.
Bye-bye. That was a nice drop-in visit by Kevin there. We appreciate him a lot. And I'll tell you what, I did not know that changelog existed in the Dartlang stuff with all the details. So that's really great knowledge. I'm going to have a hunt through that.
Now you're going to be bookmarking that and reading it weekly or so.
Well, I was actually looking through some of that, and I was like, oh, that's actually really interesting. How about this? They've actually, I didn't know this, they've added unawaited as a top-level function to Dart core. To Dart async. And I'm like, yes, I know there was a move away from pedantic, but I didn't know unawaited is going to become part of the language. I'm like, that is brilliant, right?
It's amazing what you can find when you go through that stuff. I've looked through the Flutter logs too, which also sometimes showed up things I hadn't been aware that things have changed on. I mean, what's great is a lot of the public Medium blog postings and things like that cover a lot of what changes, but never all the gritty details. And having access to change logs is really, really useful. And it's usually at a higher level than just looking at the patch list, because the patch list is insane. You really don't want to watch that.
Felix Simoes, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name terribly. I'm a stupid English guy here. That link will take you to the bit about enums, but basically this new enum interface that all enums implement, so you can do a lot more traversal over enums and looking at the index right now. But they're improving enums with many things coming up in the not too distant future, basically. So we'll start seeing name and a few other fields that we can start using just to make using enums easier. And there's an upcoming feature that's still being spec'd, which I'll put a link to in the chat, which is allowing enums to have members, so it avoids that whole need to make classes with static constants, basically emulating enums which is great because there was a definite separation. When you do an emulation of Enum, it loses its language capability, so that switch statement won't know it's an Enum, so it doesn't give you that you're missing covering certain Enums. There's other reasons to go between the two for sure. But anyway, yeah, so it's really interesting to see those that sort of what was it, meta programming examples there. That's really I'm liking the look of that. That's really, yeah, it's going to come in really handy, right? I wonder how many packages are actually going to like Remy's freezed and a few other things that could take advantage of that sort of interface, because the way Remy's had to do freezed is to use like extension methods and other things to kind of implement what you could have done with meta programming, right?
Yeah.
It's not, and because of the layers it adds and extra function calls and all this other stuff, it adds, just to get around the language, as it were, right? Whereas with the meta programming, language gets out of the way. I mean, as you said, there's restrictions, so I don't know, right? But if the language gets out of the way in that sense, and you're generating the code in class, right, in place, then that solves a bunch of those issues that you have trying to work around it, and would speed up and give a performance boost to things like freeze and other things that do that sort of code generation. So
I really like that the language is slowly evolving, but in a conservative way, that they're really thinking through 10 different ways every time before they make one step. And I appreciate that about that, because, there are languages that have progressed much quicker and had disastrous consequences as a result. I'm looking at you, PHP. But it's really wonderful that there are smarter people than me worrying about this. That I always find that wonderful and delicious. And like I said, I'm on the change log for the spec, and it's the subtleties of what they have to specify to be able to decide what Dart should be doing next is amazing. It's just amazing, and that you have to think through all these things. I mean, yeah, if you ever have some insomnia, I would recommend reading the Dart spec. It will put you to sleep about chapter 3.
So okay, let's start going through some questions and see how we go. So are we planning to use another language for programming in Flutter?
I think that was coming up during FPDart. They wanted to know if we were using functional programming as opposed to Dart. No.
Oh, I see what you mean. No. I mean, it's still Dart.
It's still Dart. Still Dart.
Extra types and syntax sugar on top.
Right. Yeah.
Let's see what else we've got down here, going down the list.
And composition over inheritance would be a good one, I guess.
I like this kind. The pattern matching as ML language is great. I think there's it might be interesting too if Dart gets this whole pattern matching part of the language, right? Like this the pattern spec, then we might be seeing more ML stuff done directly in Dart, because it would be more because it can be actually written out easier, right? I do wonder if you might be able to, since the new ML chips have ARM cores still that are coming out in these new devices now. So there might be a chance of actually taking compiled Dart code and running it on these ML chips, right? So
wow,
there might be some stuff coming up in the future that might be fun.
Cool.
I think these ML languages and machine learning is different things, Simon.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Well,
yeah.
I was also talking about languages used for machine learning, like Python and stuff. Like they have a lot of those languages have that kind of capability. But yeah.
So I think that ML is stuff like OCaml or Haskell. Most likely.
Yeah. Have you seen the Kraken framework?
Release the Kraken.
It seems to be a JS API built on top of the Flutter engine.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I know. I heard about this. It's meant to be an alternative to like Flutter. It's meant to be like you can use JavaScript, but with the Flutter front end.
Oh, yeah, and it creates Dart.
Something like that.
Oh, I've heard of this. And it seems like a Frankenstein abomination, but okay. I mean, it's
Open Kraken. That was it. Yeah.
Oh, there's Open Kraken already. Wow.
No, this is it. I think this is it. I think it's the same thing, isn't it?
There was the closed source Kraken, which people used for 3 or 4 years, but now there's an Open Kraken version. Yes.
Yeah. You know what? I have no idea. This is now like I'm showing it's a Chinese website called Open Kraken, so maybe it is something completely different.
Yeah. Anytime there's a language translation, there's bound to be something lost in translation. That's guaranteed.
Where did I see this? Was it? I thought it was Open Kraken. It is. Yeah. I mean, it's got. It is. It's got a high performance web rendering engine built on Flutter. Yeah. I'll put the link in the chat here.
It's for people that don't want to learn Dart, but how hard is that?
Well, it's not, is it? I think they're using JavaScript. Am I right? I don't know.
Yeah, you're using TypeScript probably, not JavaScript.
Yeah. Well, same difference.
Oh man, now half of our audience is up in arms.
Don't send me hate mail.
That's Simon at.
Funny. I don't even know what I'm looking at here. This. I'm seeing Dart code and stuff.
It's a translator from TypeScript to Dart.
Is that the idea? So it translates your TypeScript into Dart and then
compiles the Dart. It was like, well, just write in Dart, guys.
I don't know. If you find it useful, why not? Go ahead, use it.
Yeah, really. Yeah. If you want those kind of training wheels, fine. Go.
Hey, Gary, thanks for the question. Gary Montgomery, thoughts on Dart for server-side code?
Use it.
It's currently being used by many people for Dart server-side code because there's now Scratch Docker images made by the Dart team that support it.
Right.
They have full stack. The images that come out, I can tell you right now, I have a API deployment right now in the works, and it's 7 megabytes deployment. I mean, I talk about like your 1 gigabyte, Ubuntu containers that you want to ship. No, just ship your 7 megabyte compiled Dart binary with its associated smooth configuration files, and that's it. Shipped. Done.
So, that's the Dart FN package, right? Is that Dart function? Dart FN.
Dart FN.
FN.
Oh, no, you're talking about FFI.
No, Dart FN. It's a package that came out about 6 months ago for building Dart functions.
Package for Dart. Yes. So there's that. Yeah, I'll put that in the chat. This one here we're talking about.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I actually haven't used this. This is just I think a tooling thing actually, but basically, this is about cloud functions, right? Specifically.
Yeah, cloud functions.
So there's the functions framework for Dart. Yeah, this is it. Yeah. Okay. So there's some work that's been done around this, but to be honest, the thing I like is the fact that you can use Cloud Run, with a Docker container that's just running your Dart code, right? But that equally it means that any cloud-based provider, AWS, Microsoft, whoever, it's a container. Just run your container wherever you want. You can run whatever Dart code. You can be doing any networking stack. It can be HTTP2, S, whatever, raw sockets, who knows, whatever you want, right?
Cool. Yeah. I may have to deploy something like that soon. That would be fun.
Definitely. Can you get Dash? I'm afraid we don't know where you get dashes from, so no. We get them from events, and then since there's been no events for 2 years,
I shouldn't say. No. I'm going to jinx it, but I shouldn't say this. But I have a FedEx tracking number for something being delivered apparently today.
Oh, well,
then sucks
from people that know better. So I'm not saying that maybe next week I can hold something up.
Hey, John.
That I don't have.
Sorry to see you go.
Today. It's on a FedEx truck today. It's somewhere. It's somewhere close by.
Actually, I like this can be useful for Dart server as well. And there's definitely a lot you could do. I mean, you can imagine some notion of doing some shelf or something like that, where you can use a meta program to kind of do the boilerplate around like API handlers and stuff. And there's some interesting things.
There are times when you have enough information in the code that you've written that you can do some fancy stuff with it. I mean, like the example of the copy with, for example. I mean, once you have like the class constructor, copy with is really just an adaptation of that.
Yes.
And so it would be handy to be able to say this copy with comes from this class constructor, but with these modifications. For example, going back to the first part of the show, FPDart probably wants nullable fields to be instead represented with the option some and none. And so it'd be nice to be able to say derive it from the nullable fields like this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the whole the whole thing about copy width, there's a great plugin that there's a great package I actually use from Pub. It's I can't remember what it is now. Copy with extension or something like that.
Okay.
Copy with extension gen is the package. Okay. I'll put it in the chat here. And basically, what you do is you do @copy with above your class, and it generates the copy with, and it also allows you to do a copy with nullable if you want to have the nullable fields to be able to set them back to null if you want to, right? Like
cool.
And it generates the code for you. And obviously there's other options out there, but I like mixing things like the JSON serializable class with copy with because I'm getting those two things. But obviously there's alternatives like freeze that does both for you. And then there's built value that also does a similar job and generates these things for you. They don't use copy with, they use a builder mechanism where you create a builder object and set the values on that, and you get your response object from that. So
cool.
But yeah, there's some interesting things. Oh, someone's told us Kraken isn't a language translation. It just uses the Flutter engine from what I was reading. Okay, it doesn't use C++ because it's in web, so it only uses the JavaScript version. So I have a feeling that they're definitely using some mishmash of. I mean, it's not how it's supposed to work, but yeah, it sounds to me like they're using like the idea of building a website with TypeScript, but then the output rendering engine is Flutter, basically.
Yep. Cool. And we're still looking for more questions. We're getting close to the end of our show, so if there's any quick last questions, we're here for you.
I tell you, whilst we're talking through things, if I can find it, that is. Yes, so I'm going to share this. So this is one that people missed, I think. If you were using Dart to native, big change. Yeah, it's now Dart compile exe and Dart compile AOT snapshot, depending on if you want an executable or you want an AOT snapshot.
There are half a dozen commands that have gone away recently.
Well, it all becomes subcommands from Dart, right? Like Dart FMT is Dart space format now, right? It has been for a while, but yeah, no. Finally, Dart to native's gone away. Is now Dart compile and Dart compile snapshot.
I remember when CodeMagic upgraded and all that stuff went away. I was basically the one that came up with the authoritative postings on the CodeMagic blog to basically say, or the CodeMagic Slack, I should say, to basically say, these 5 commands are gone. You have to replace it with this. And it was like, they were shocked. They didn't actually even know that their upgrade of Dart and Flutter actually did that. I was going, hey, by the way, you probably should know that if anybody's using these commands, they're going to be in trouble. So I was happy to contribute to CodeMagic for that.
I'm kind of looking at this. This is kind of interesting, right? These are all the fixes they've done around some of the, fix the false positives on this. And so it's nice to see the linter rules are all getting.
The Flutter lints is amazing. I tell you, it annoys me with how many times it says something should be a const, but I'm happy that it does. But sadly, it's nested though. So if it says this element needs to
there
be
needs
const.
there needs to be a quick fix option,
And then
which
you
just
do
removes
that.
the const from
Yeah.
the constructors inside. That'd be really handy.
And then you do that, and then it says then the outer thing needs to be const. And so you do that, and then it says, well, the inner thing shouldn't be const now. And I go, why didn't you tell me to do that then? Right.
Isn't that what Flutter fix does?
No, well, yes, but no, what he's talking about is you get two linter checks, two linter fixes, one for the inner constructor, one for the outer constructor in your widget.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And if you fix the one on the inside, it fixes that. And then it says, oh, the one on the outside needs. So you do the one on the outside, and then it tells you to remove the one on the inside because it's already const.
Yeah.
Like, and so I've kind of like programmed myself to always go for the outside one first.
I do that now. Now. If I see square brackets, I just type const in front of it and figure out.
Definitely like better. Those updates to the linters are very helpful.
Kill them all and let God sort it out. Yes.
Pub ignore, that's also very handy now, finally. This is interesting. Pub deps --JSON gives you machine readable parsable of the current dependencies. That might be interesting. If you're
we have a Scott in the chat room.
Why isn't Scott here?
Yeah, Scott.
How dare you?
Don't be making comments. Be joining us.
Git dependencies relative repo. I mean, with a relative repo URL. Ooh, moves into okay, interesting. Pub run package command. Interesting. Okay. So I mean, I might have to have a look over and see if there's any other issues that came out in these previous ones. That has anyone been using the type aliases?
Oh yeah.
I've used them a few times now. They're really handy.
Except that the analyzer doesn't expand them properly yet, unless they fixed that recently. So what happens is you can make a type alias. For example, just to be more annotative, I was aliasing grams to num so that I could say something is so many grams, but it wouldn't autocomplete, because it didn't know that type yet. And I talked to Dan about it, Dan Tuppenny, and he said, yeah, it's because the analyzer doesn't tell me that yet. And so we have to wait for the analyzer to catch up. Here's the issue. And so that may have been fixed by now, but it was definitely annoying for a while.
This is interesting. Cannot ignore. You can say you can't ignore these things. So you can't, so even if they're ignored even if you override them with like a comments in the code for
oh wow, this is
quite funny. It's like give with one hand, take away on the other, and give back on the other.
This is like having what is it, exclamation mark in CSS,
right? Yeah,
where it's like this is more important than that is.
Literally the keyword important with an exclamation mark to show it's more important than the one with important. It's like,
yeah. Then you need double exclamation mark for like most important.
Right. Well, let's see. We got some questions coming. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
Let's see what that's actually going. Oh, this is nice. Thanks.
Yay! Thank you. We enjoy doing what we do. That's why we do it. And
I don't know if it's the place for this. It's always a place for everything. What is your position about code generation? I am still kind of new to Dart and Flutter. I am a bit skeptical. I mean, to be honest, right?
When it works, it's good.
Right. I mean, the thing is, if all the other languages. So let's just throw some words out there. So mirrors or mirroring, right, where you analyze the symbols of your code and your functions of your code at runtime, which is what you can do. What a lot of people would do to solve these problems in the early Android apps at Java, has a drawback because it means you have to ship all your symbol names and everything else as part of your app, which means it's easy to decompile and to reverse engineer your app, right? So bad idea. Also, it's a slow process because you're analyzing textual content. So it's the same as if you want to do anything, you're like, oh, what classes in my app have this annotation? Well, suddenly you now have to traverse all the classes that have been compiled into your app to find that annotation. Like it's not a non-practical thing to do at runtime. Because the difference here is every time your app runs, it's doing these things over and over and over again to analyze, self-analyze. Whereas why not just do that once when your app is compiling, and then it's compiled into the final product, right? That way you do it once on your machine when you compile, and the end result already has it built in. It knows up front because it has the symbols during compilation. So the whole point about code generation is to instead of putting it in the runtime, put it at compile time, and this way you get the best of both worlds. You get the speed without and without the performance penalty that you would get from mirroring. Does that kind of make sense? So
Yeah.
So that's one major benefit. The other one is with code generation, you can do whatever you want, right? And we've seen some really amazing things come out of code generation with Dart and so on. Mainly that a lot of languages have boilerplate, right? So with boilerplate, I'm just going to mute there, Raf. There's a lot of background sound. So we're doing a lot of boilerplate. You can get rid of that with code generation, and a lot of languages end up having a lot of boilerplate to do maybe common patterns, right? They haven't made their way into the language yet. But as we're just discussing today, one of the nicer things that we have with owning, well, I said I mean, you know, the language comes along with the framework. Like Dart and Flutter are very much in work together. Is that any of the things that we have problems with building apps using the language can make its way back into the language funnel and be added as part of the language. So a good example of this is using for and if statements inside of arrays, inside of array constructors, right? So now that was a huge, I mean, for the people coming on now, that's just normal. But yeah, I mean, it's a real pain when we had to do Flutter apps without that. And the flip from what it was before to what it is now is huge difference.
You kids don't know how good you have it.
right. I thought old saying that. 3 years ago, we didn't have this in Flutter.
We had to do it the hard way with .add.
I mean, I don't. The whole skeptical. I don't know what you'll be skeptical about. So I'd love to hear a bit about what your issues might be with it. What else do we have here? They're using the Flutter desktop rendering engine as well.
There's the compute function question from Victor.
Oh, okay.
Which is, I think, an interesting question.
Sorry, what?
Victor, about six.
Well, let's get down to it.
Or do you have one before that?
I'm gonna make my way down, otherwise I'm gonna lose where we're at. So
yeah. Okay. Well, eventually Victor's question will be answered, or at least we'll ramble about it. We're good at that.
What else we got down to? So I'm just trying. Do you guys prefer to use the compute function? Oh, it is the next one. Okay, yeah.
That was it. That's what I was talking about.
Do you guys prefer to use the compute function or long-lived isolate for all your network requests? How about neither?
Yeah.
So the end of the day, Victor, networking is set up. Network data is set up in little packets, so it doesn't take up a lot of the time, right? So it all depends on the amount of data. If I was going to do, say, retrieve like a 6 meg JSON download and pass it, yes, I'm going to download making that's 6 million bytes. I'm going to pass.
That would be scary.
I'm going to do that on a back end isolate then, or if I were going to do on the front end, I'd have to make sure I quite strategically place async and awaits so that there's the thread that's currently doing the JSON passing goes into a wait state, allowing the UI to render, right? So yeah, yes, there's a reason to do it, but to be honest, there's been. I started trying to use compute and isolates and stuff in the past. They were pretty slow to speed up, so it wasn't really practical. And so to spin up a new isolate for every request was not practical. And that's why the compute function doesn't make sense.
You have two bottlenecks there. One is that just firing up an isolate takes time, although that's been improved in 2.15.
Yeah.
But also
2.14.
Or 2.14, yeah. But also you have to serialize your data to go across the wire, essentially the internal wire, from your main thread, your UI thread, over to the isolate thread. And that takes time. So unless you can somehow work out, either keeping the isolate alive and using it multiple times so that you don't have the startup time for that. And there are packages for that. I think it's called Worker or something like that. there are packages for that. And
they have improved that whole thing now. Like I'm trying to remember what it was now. The whole party of bytes and like buffers of data.
Yeah, there's like a zero copy
now,
copy one. Which is nice. So, but it still takes time. It still takes time to do all that. So you pay that cost. If you can instead do it in the UI thread, but make sure that your asynchronous operations are better. And that's one of the things that happened in Flutter 2.5 is that they improved the async priority for the UI thread so that the async for non-rendering options apparently is now lower in priority, and it really improved jank, which is nice.
Let's see what else we have here. And as I said, they've improved the speed of startup isolates now. So maybe not having one long-lived isolate and having to handle data back and forth and using compute might be more practical now, because I think you can do like 10,000 isolates in like 10 seconds. Like I can't remember that.
Wow.
There's a huge performance boost.
I got to try that. That sounds like fun.
Maxim Lin, I think his name Maxim.
Okay.
GDE from Australia or New Zealand, I forget which. He's going to hate me for that.
You don't want to mix those up. Oh, never.
He did a talk in around 30 Days of Flutter. Was it in March this year about those? I think it was. I mean, honestly, just YouTube Flutter isolates. I'm sure you'll find it.
That'll be probably the first stuff.
MAKS is Max. Anyway, what else do we have here? Google Maps package is quite clunky with resize, overlays, and animations since it's platform view embedded in Flutter view. Any suggestions? I'd say it's only clunky in your debug view. It should not be that clunky in release. They've improved this a lot. They've actually improved platform views in the most recent version of Flutter, so check that out.
And keep in mind that 2 years ago, you wouldn't even be able to ask this question.
Right. I was going to say, like, this is always going to be a problem, because the rendering of the Google map is happening over here, independent, and the size of it is independent from the Flutter stack over here, right? And it's rendering it over here and putting the image of it inside of Flutter, right? It's like a magic trick. And that's always going to be the case because it's completely independent. So the only way this is going to improve if Google Maps release a Flutter rendered / Dart rendered output, right? So it's actually compiled into the code base, or you go ahead and use one of the mirrors. There are plenty of other map solutions that are Flutter and Dart. So there's Flutter Maps and a few others that you use here maps, OpenStreetMaps, and a few of the other different maps providers. But until Google Maps decide to build a Dart specific package that's deployed, then it's not. You're going to have that clunky resize happening probably.
It seems odd that Google on floor 3 is not talking to Google on floor 2 about this.
I'd say that there is a nice little trick you could do to solve this problem that you have. So I don't know what you're doing, but if you're maybe have a panel and you're expanding the panel and it has a Google map in it, render the Google map in its largest size using an overlay box, overflow box, and then use a clip, and you change the clip size, and it's the same as revealing more of the map without it re-rendering and resizing. So it will never have to redraw. Does that kind of make sense? So you're revealing more of the map, so it looks like it's resizing, but what you're actually doing is just revealing more of what's underneath.
Can you build that off screen too? Would that be useful?
Yes. Yeah. So there's no requirement for platform views to be on screen for them to render. So
right. And a lot of people don't understand this. There's actually a technology called was off screen is the name of the widget?
Yes, off screen.
Yeah.
Off
So
stage,
you can
off stage.
Off stage. So you can basically build as childs of that. There's an English word, Randall. Children of that. You can build things that aren't rendered. They don't take up space in the widget tree until you actually bring them on stage.
I tell you a little tip. There's a widget called Visibility. A widget called Visibility lets you choose if you want it to maintain state, animations, size, be on screen, be part of the layout tree, be part of the render tree. There's lots of options with it. when is Flutter for TV going to be available? It is available right now. There you go.
But which one?
Which TV?
Well, any
Which
TV,
TV?
because most of the TV platforms that have like app stores either support web content or they support Android content, right? So if you've got Android TV or a Fire TV or any of these, their apps are Android apps, right? So you can build any Android app with Flutter, sold. That's easy enough. And then the ones that don't support that are web apps, and they all support, more fun enough, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then that's where Flutter can be used. I don't know about the performance of what it would be like for a TV to run a Flutter web app, and that would be an interesting idea. But for the most part, I think you'll find that you could just deploy your app to the myriad of web stores. So you need to, if you're trying to do it for Android, there's you have to say there's a meta tag you have to add to your manifest file to say it's hardware TV, and then that tells the app, the Play Store, that it's to be only shipped to devices that are on TV. So they open up the store on their TV and they'll see it on there. But you can go read up about how to deploy Android apps on Android TV and Fire TV and such.
Martin's in the chat has a great point. You can even measure off-staged widgets.
Oh, nice.
Which means that you can build it and then see how big it is.
So right.
Cool.
So what have we got here? What else do we have going down?
We're down to the wire for a 2-hour show, so let's start.
We're going to start wrapping up. I'm going to start. This is what we talked about the isolates.
Yeah.
The main concern was maintainability of the generated code if some language breaking change comes along in the future. Okay, so you don't maintain the point here is you don't maintain the generated code. You expect the people that are generating the code to the provider of the generator to make sure the output. But if you're doing your own code generation, yes, you're going to have to maintain the output. But that's like if you were writing it by hand anyway, you'd have to maintain it. So, it's still taking away the advantage. And so far, I've not seen this concern. Like literally has not came. So we've seen code generation go through from Dart 1 to Dart 2, big language changes there with dynamic typing. And then, then we had the several other language changes coming, and then we had nullability. And nowhere along the line have we had those sorts of any sort of big issues around this, right? People want their packages, their code generation packages to continue working for people, right? So, and they're giving ample opportunity and time to move. Like the nullability thing was how we were doing the null. We're still doing the null move, as it were, but that whole thing started a year ago, maybe more than a year ago now.
A year and a half, I think.
Year and a half at least. And everyone's and then it's only just now, I think, in the past few releases that we've seen nullable by default being the actual thing that you're compiling against. So people were given like a year to upgrade their packages and to move. It still didn't happen, mind you. But when things break, people make the changes. So
we do suggest that anything that's not nullable now in the pub is basically abandoned.
Yeah.
So be careful of using anything that doesn't have a null version yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, like if it hasn't had the love to move it by now, then it's probably a abandoned package anyway. Hi, Mike. Well, nice to see you. I guess one of the concerns with the code gen is that I've seen is that that it can increase build times a lot if extensively used in a project. Other ways, there are ways to reduce it. So, well, so yes, I'd say you're right, but only if you're not committing your code gen and you're running your code gen as part of your build, right? Yeah. I personally think that you should. And this is a matter for debate. I personally think that you should commit your generated code to your repo because it is your code. At the end of the day, if you want to check out that code and run it, that commit, right? You want to check out that commit and run the code exactly as it was made at that time. We can't be generating code again because it's going to be generated with perhaps a different generated version of generate, or fresh version of Flutter, or who knows what, right?
Right.
So the point here is that if you want to commit, you need to commit that code as part of your project. So yes, there's that side of it. But it also means that it doesn't increase build times because you're not running the code gen each time you build.
Just be sure that those files are excluded from the analyzer because that throws things off. Yeah,
no, definitely. I do see though the point that in metaprogramming coming up that might increase the timeline. But then, as Kevin was saying earlier, that they're doing incremental builds with that, right? Meaning that they're only recompiling what's necessary and not everything all over again each time they build, which will definitely sort out any sort of impactful impact on compilation. No,
yeah, it's going to be in the UI thread. Yeah.
No, it would be so. I'm going to say yes and no, right? So yes, it possibly would, but from JSON, actually, it's passing from a map. So at that point, it's just looking at a map, extracting the values, and putting them into fields. That's all you're doing at that point, right? It's the JSON.decode or JSON codec, JSON decoder convert, or whatever it is you're calling beforehand, that does the actual from text from the server sending over the wire to nested map tree for Dart to interpret. That takes time, but again, it's done in incremental bits. I mean, you're doing an asynchronous function, so I won't go into it. You can go read up about coroutines, but asynchronous way are coroutines, and they're basically a way of separating up chunking up the time that is used by Dart for various things, and it doesn't stop when a new frame request comes in. It starts a new async task, a new coroutine to render it, so it's scheduled amongst the other ones. So yeah, you shouldn't have any jank issues by doing that, and if you are, it's literally because one unit of decoding time, as it were, one unit of block of decoding is taken longer than one frame, right? And at that point, yes, I'll go use an isolate, right? But don't just go using isolates before you just do it yourself. So do it normally. If you start seeing jank, then use isolates, right?
Your processor can cover an awful lot of JSON in a single frame.
Yeah. You'd be surprised. It's a kind of funny. Like we talk about, I remember trying to optimize something on a desktop machine, and I was trying to measure. It was measuring the microseconds. It was something in assembly once. I can't remember what it was, but you end up measuring because milliseconds are just too fast now. It's like the billions of gigahertz, or billions of operations per second, and you're just trying to do a few functions, right, or whatever it is, to do some passing of text or whatever it might be. You have to do 10,000 iterations or 100,000 iterations and work at the average to get any idea about what time it takes, right? Because like a whole decompress of something now takes, you're talking about milliseconds, where before that would have been seconds, right? Like orders of magnitude difference.
It'd be an interesting experiment to figure out how large a text string I need to have for JSON decode to take longer than a frame. I'm sure it's huge. I'm sure we're talking megabytes.
So Felix, sorry, I was sorry about that. Felix. It does add a lot of functionality. I prefer not to use freeze because it adds a lot more code that I don't use. So I prefer to use other packages that do code generation that do just the things that I need, right? So each their own. And if you find it does what you want, great. But remember that Dart is a tree shaking compiler, meaning that if you don't use any of these functions, they don't get compiled into your output, right? So although it might add lots of code in the generated files, they might not be in the final product, right? I
still like the Visual Studio Code extension called Dart Data Class Generator, I think is the name, DDCG, something like that, because it generates copy with and constructors and things like that based on the final fields that you have in your class. And it does it as a text-to-text translation. So it's not a build time or a runtime thing. It's a compile time thing. It's an edit time thing, which really works out nicely.
When is the mouse scroll going to get fixed on macOS desktop? It is fixed. It came out in the most recent version.
2.5?
2.5 has a fix for this, I believe.
Cool.
They made it so that you don't drag like you do on touchscreens. It has support for the mouse properly. Yeah, so that should be fine. Is sliver at bar floating issue for web resolved? I've been waiting for the past 1. Well, fix it.
Yeah.
Don't wait for someone else to fix it. Fix it yourself and give it back. I mean, if you find that you could have spent maybe half a day. I mean, sure, it might take someone else a quicker time if they knew it better. But maybe it takes you 3 days. 3 days is better than 1.5 years, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to resolve it, there's only a limited resource, and the only way that they're going to do it is by working on what's needed the most. So if your issue only affects a small audience, then it's not going to get as much love as something that affects a larger audience. That's just a fact that matters, right? So I'd say post your issue to some of the Flutter community groups,
or track the issue,
and they might help you, or try start fixing it and say, look, I'm trying to fix this issue. I got to this point. Someone might come along and say, oh, you're doing this, or you need to do that, and help you along your road, right? But yeah, sitting back and waiting for the Flutter team to do it is not going to happen. There's not enough people, right, to do that. That's why it's an open source project. It's a large project.
Yep. And apparently for the 2.5 release, there were more commits from outside the core team than inside. In fact, it was like the largest number of pull requests, commits, contributions from the community. Flutter is truly now a community project. It's obvious from everything we look at.
You're welcome, Felix. And I hope I'm saying your name right. So I think we've gone over our 2-hour mark, which we weren't even going to go for like this long anyway. But I think it's been a very productive stream, and it's great to see Kevin in here.
Oh, Kevin was great.
Internals.
What a bonus.
So, yeah.
And Scott's over in the wings. He's not coming on because he apparently has noise outside his building, so he's not going to do that.
All right. Well, let's go for 3. No, shut up, Scott.
So Scott and I are talking about going to bi-weekly. So we may not be here next week, but if we are, we are. So watch the streams.
I was going to say, yeah, and follow the Flutter community, Flutter.com, COMM, on Twitter, and that's where we'll do announcements about Humpday Q&A and future stuff that's happening within the community. And there's stuff that's happening in the future, so stay tuned. All right, see you soon.
Push the button, Frank.
Thanks. Cheers.